They say Ajax. Just say Ajax. It's not hard to say.
It is, because over here we have a town that's like literally.
Well, over
like
there you're wrong.
20
Just say
minutes
Ajax.
called
No, say Ajax. Why did I say Ajax? You got me good as well now. Anyways, guys, welcome back to the Cannon Podcast. As we discuss what are the important pronunciations of Ajax, Amsterdam. And we of course have a massive podcast today, 1 hour as always, special for the YouTube members. The YouTube members for the YouTube viewers. Spotify, and where else, Alex?
Apple, Google Podcasts, everywhere, mate. Absolutely everywhere.
We are everywhere. Massive podcast, of course. Got a lot to break down. But lads, how are we doing first things first over this boring international break? I'll tell you that.
It is far too long. It's far too long. And also, I mean, we're going to talk about international football in general, but it just feels like if we had to rank international breaks, the March one is the worst.
This is the worst one.
By a mile. By a mile. Because it's just so inconvenient. Everyone's pulling out. Everyone knows the game tactics. Everyone's not quite involved. The games are terrible because they're all friendlies. Rubbish. Get rid of it.
Loki, what do you make? What do you guys make of this whole pulling phrasing? What do you guys make of players being, smartly taken out of?
Depends, isn't it? Depends what you're looking for.
God. Moving on. What do you make of players not committing to the internationals, especially before Euros? Because I'm trying to think, like, from a coaching perspective, I would look at this one international break before a major tournament as important. If I was a coach of an international, then I would say, look,
you will be, George, one day, Canada coach. I can see it.
We hope so. I can't even help us. But what do you guys think about players leaving? And is that on the coaches that are involved? Is that, for example, on Mikel Arteta and this whole idea of dark arts? Because there's genuinely a part of me that feels, why do people think that a 2-week break without football is a bad thing? Like, international football is slower paced. If you're going to have a break in the middle of a season, by the way, just pure fitness wise, you're going to want them doing something. And there's nothing like a physical game. And so I've never understood that this fear that a match equals greater risk of injury than training. I mean, these guys go full blooded. If you ever watch a full on training session, guys aren't pulling out. They're not being careful of the superstar. There is a lot of nice eyebrow raise. There is a lot of gamesmanship, I think, in international football already. It's a slower pace. It's a different type of tempo. So I'm not sure why fans place so much energy into the debate of injury or not.
I think for some reason, I don't know what you boys feel, but for some reason, my eye roll goes twice as hard if a player gets injured on internationals rather than for the club. Even though it's the same injury and they got injured playing football, it just, for some reason, it feels kind of pointless. And this the thing is, it's maybe this kind of opens us up into the conversation about international football and Southgate and so on, but it depends how you view international football. I think there is a lot to be gained from international football. There's a lot to be gained from the experiences. I think there's a lot to be gained for players going away. I see what you mean, George. I think, to some degree, to keep the players ticking over, staying in games. It's players, and maybe it's a specific Arsenal thing as well, because players like Declan Rice, he didn't pull up, but he had a moment where he sort of he was limping a little bit against Brazil, and I was like, he's fine. It's Declan Rice. He's fine. But I think there's something to do with us as Arsenal fans, and maybe it is, I'm sure everyone feels it as well, but it feels like we've had so many players picking up niggles at horrible times in the season that that fear plays in. And again, I always say this, if something doesn't feel rational or logical, it's because it's not. It's based in an understandable feeling or and a sense that that there is something that always goes wrong, and it's always this end of the season, and it always derails us, etc. So I don't think it is necessarily logical. I think you are right, but I really understand the sentiment behind it, because it is incredibly annoying if it happens.
Yeah, I mean, I was unfortunately at the game for England against Brazil, and I'm thinking, look, England-Brazil, Endrick and
mate, you could have played. I'll tell you that.
I could have. I was waiting, and it got to the point where if you go into any recent England games, the fans get so bored that all they do is throw paper airplanes onto the pitch, and that becomes the source of entertainment for every person in the stadium. Oh, is he gonna get to the pitch? Nope. Yep. I mean, that's it, and the point is, that's been a thing for years. It's not just in the past few months, and there is something really boring about it. There is no vibe to it, even the atmosphere and stuff, and it feels like a waste of time. I'll be so real. And I actually have a ticket for the game on Tuesday, but I don't want to go to it now. And that's because I've been to so many of the England games in the last year or so, and I'm like, look, none of them has been good. They've all wasted my time. And it's not trying to be me being ungrateful. It's just that it's not a fun experience to watch the football. As in, the better experiences are just staying with your friends and hanging out. And then the game goes, the game's in now. We have to wait to watch the game now. And it's like it's becoming a drawback. So I think going into the future, especially as England fans, less and less Canada. I'm not quite sure about the Canadian national team personally. Gareth Southgate, Alex, let's have a bit of a conversation. What do you want to say?
I was watching that game against Brazil, and it just,
unfortunate.
I think it's really hard from an international perspective. First and foremost, the most important thing to say is the England job is really difficult. Any international job is really, really difficult because the amount of time you have on the training ground, the intensity, the pressure, the lack of time with the players, all that stuff. It is hard. You also have to handle players who maybe more want to play for their clubs. There's lots of different situations. So I'm not in any way suggesting that the England job is easy. It's really not. But the most important part of being a manager is maximizing your resources, and in my opinion, being the person with the best football ideas before anything else, before culture, before handling players, before handling development, before being good with the media, before any of that. You have to have the best football ideas. You have to. And I watch England because everything precipitates from there. And I watch England and I watched them against Brazil, and I thought there is no structure in the final third, completely collapsed in, no width, no natural width, and no coached width at all. So we make it incredibly easy for Brazil to collapse in, collapse the spaces, and shut us out. Anthony Gordon is just given complete free license to do whatever he wants, as are a lot of players. You can step in, you can go back, you can run after us, which creates all these horrible transition moments. There's no pattern play. There's no sense of urgency in the build-up. There's no sense of... And also in terms of maximising resources, putting people in their best positions. What is Phil Foden's superstar quality? Receiving in the block and turning. That is his for me anyway, and I'm sure people might disagree. That is his superstar quality, right? What is Jude Bellingham's superstar quality? He's him moments arriving in the box. What is, and so on and so on and so on. John Stones or whatever, putting players in positions where they can do it over and over again. And what frustrates me with Southgate is I understand you want to give the players individual freedom, and you want to say, look, let's go out there, and I'm sure a lot of the pre-chat in the tunnel and in the dressing room is go out there and express yourself, boys. That's all very well and good, but if all of us on this podcast went, let's all go out and express ourselves, boys, we'd be talking over each other. It wouldn't make any sense. We'd be talking about different things. It's an absolute nightmare, even though we all have things to say. So there has to be some kind of structure to allow that individual freedom to flourish. And there's so much and this is the thing is, put some basic principles in there. So anyway, that's the football stuff, and I could go on about that. But what people love about Southgate, and they talk about, is, but he's done so much for England. He's done all these, he's brought the culture together. People like going away to England now. Great. That's a director of football's job. That's all lovely, and that helps. I'm not saying that doesn't help at all. But a manager's primary focus should be, how do I get my team playing? And in 4 tournaments of Southgate, I don't see a plan. I don't see individuals flourishing. I don't see, and the players, and we spoke about this with the Ben White situation, the loyalty he shows to certain players has held us back. So look, in conclusion, can England win something this summer? Of course they can. Look at Jude Bellingham, Phil Foden, Harry Kane, Bukayo Saka, unbelievable football players. But to guarantee that, everything needs to be in alignment, and the football ideas aren't good enough. And I'll finish with this. I was speaking to my boss at work while it was on, and he was sort of saying, who do you get in to replace him? Who do you get in to replace him? We've got this mindset in England of like the manager should be this sort of fulcrum and beacon of Englishness, and they should be this, just get the best guy for the job. Who's got the best football ideas? Who can coach the players best and make us win matches? Then everything else takes care of itself. The culture takes care of itself if you're winning. The players' involvement takes care of itself if you're winning. And that all comes, as we know from Mikel Arteta, from good football ideas. That's the most important thing, and it feels like it's being forgotten.
I do agree. I think Southgate is a manager that is a bit old school in the methods, and it has worked to an extent. But he always plays every game as a knockout stage game. He trusts to keep himself in the game, and that's a mindset that is so boring to watch in person. And I think, puts fans going off again. And of course, the Euros around the corner. We'll see what happens there. But he's going to most likely leave after that. And the question then becomes who replaces him. But I do wonder, how would Mikel Arteta do as an international coach? How would his teams look? How would he, because of course, just to forget, he couldn't play for Spain, but he also could play for England. He tried to at least at one point.
He would be one of the most overpowered international coaches possible. I mean, his superpower is out of possession. In tournament football, you can lock down the out of possession quality and game, then you win tournaments. It's really that simple. I think, look, from an outsider, I don't understand English practices. I don't know why people are hiding behind the fact that England have the best footballing talent in the world. And the only people to rival that is potentially France. And that's not an outlandish statement to make. I mean, Germany is coming up trying to come back into it, but this is a period of really fallen giants, and it's actually quite despicable that England haven't done better. This quality has been there for a while, and I don't know why there's this loyalty, this patriotic loyalty. Particularly, I see it with England. And when you look at the history, England have had poor coaches forever. You look at the golden generation; it was a travesty the way that you guys handled that. There were much better coaches that we could have got in. I say we, but you guys could have caught in. And I just feel as though that there's this level of almost blind patriotism towards people, and I don't understand it personally because there's
sorry, go on,
sorry, yeah.
Oh, sorry. No, I was literally just going to add in quickly. I was on the Ripple Effect recently, and we were asked about who would you want for an England coach, and everyone's going Eddie Howe and all these players. I'm like, just get your mind. Who is the best coach? Pep Guardiola. Yeah. Try and get him for England. If you can't get him, who's the next best coach? Carlo Ancelotti. If you can't get him, try and get Jurgen Klopp. What is this weird? Is what you're describing? It's this bizarre mindset. I don't get it.
Yeah. I'm not too sure. And look, I mean, I look at what Roberto Martinez is doing, who him in himself is a very good coach, and he's doing brilliantly with Portugal, who is another team that I think have a lot of talent in general, but have always struggled to really put that talent together. And you're seeing how a good coach can perform. Fundamentally, when you look to fix a club, and I try to always attack this with the same principles. If I was going to fix Arsenal, if I was going to fix Manchester United, if I'm going to fix England, what are some of the first things that I do? There are non-negotiables. There are structures, there are pillars towards your philosophy that you start to lay down. Okay? There are standards. And, I think from a culture about getting people together, that isn't difficult. It isn't difficult to make a St. George's and have all the players come together. That's not difficult. What is difficult is creating a philosophy that's identifiable with your team, that's recognized worldwide, and that people go, that's how England play.
Yep.
And the worst part of it all, you're talking to the country that invented the sport, that has yet to create a philosophy that is recognizable as a brand. And, people talk about this kind of the patriotism towards it. And I think football needs to be a brand. I fundamentally believe that. I look at, there's so many different ways of winning. There's so many different ways of coaching. And I don't think that it has to be wedded to a particular coach, to a particular system. But I look at England and I say, not just is it drab, the players look bored, which is horrific on its own, but you have to be inspired, okay, as a fan. And if you're not inspired, you're not going to have support. And that's really as fundamental as what I believe in.
Yeah. There will be people who say, well, who'd you get in? And I think we've answered that. And there will also be people who say, well, it's a tough job. And I would also say it 100% is. Mm-hmm. But no one's suggesting it isn't a tough job, but it's also one of the most high-profile jobs in the sport. So it should come with criticism. It should come with critique, expectations of what it is. How long has he been in this? It's 2016, so I can't remember when it was the first tournament, but 2018 maybe. But could anyone identify what the idea is for Southgate, what his football idea is? And also, if you're aware that is out there about you, you need to then do all the things that people say he is good at in terms of using the media, in terms of getting people together, to show people what you are. In the same way that Mikel very quickly arrested the dialogue. People were questioning him about the football. Fine, but at least off the pitch, we knew there's non-negotiables. Here's how I want to play. I want day one. I want to dominate. I want to suffocate. I want to play in the opponent's half. I don't want to give them any chance. All these sorts of things. England don't press, which is fine. You don't have to play pressing football, but then they don't sit in a compact out of possession structure.
Can I ask you guys a question?
There's no ideology that is identifiable, and the answer that people give me, because again, Southgate should have a place in England. He should be a director of football. He should be, because he's clearly a skilled communicator in some aspects. He's clearly, I would probably give a little bit more credit than George to the cultural side of things, but I agree it's easier than the football side of things. However, the football itself takes care of everything. If you win 5 games in a row, there's no discussion about culture. There's no discussion about, are we setting the right template? There's no if you're winning, everything takes care of itself.
Okay, can I ask you guys a question? When we talk about the top 5 leagues, let's go back to club football, because I really feel that people understand this logic with your own club because you're more invested in it, right? When we evaluate the top 5 leagues, guys, really simply, what's the best league in the world? From unanimous
Premier
consent.
League.
Premier League.
Why?
Best
What
coaches.
is different? Okay, best coaches, but what about the football?
Best referees.
Yeah, well, not quite.
Best podcasts.
Well, that's for damn sure. But when you're talking about the football, I really want to isolate it, because the Premier League has a very distinct style of football. It's been talked about from managers beyond. It's not just fans. Pep, when he's come in, the importance of second balls, the importance about making sure that you win those are very different towards La Liga. Okay? Guys, you have a style of play that every manager who comes to the Premier League talks about. And I've never once seen England play to it. Why?
Yep.
Why? And, I think, again, it's not just about the pace and the power and all of these tropes that you're talking about, but you've got a game model that your league has been built on, that has been built on the most entertaining football in the league, by the way. It's sprinkled with possessional kind of traits, and it's sprinkled with possessional philosophies. But as a whole, the tempo of the league is completely different to every league in the world. And the tempo of England's play is completely dross, to use a term of what you guys do. And I'm like, I don't understand that disconnect. I've never understood it. And I don't think you've ever played, by the way, with that tempo. I look back at the golden generation. You look at Beckham. I'm watching that documentary again. It's giving me a lot of memories. And I'm looking at how Greece almost caused a huge upset. I'm sorry, we weren't very good. Greece was not a good team. But the tempo that the Greece team played at was different to England. And I really feel that this is the crux of the issue. I've not seen an England team play with tempo in God knows how long, despite having top quality technicians, top quality athletes, and top quality personnel that can do it. So if I was to get more specific, instead of just saying, I need a fundamental and a crux, I need to see this England team play with tempo, aggressiveness, in and out of possession. And you know what? I think that's something that the fans can align with a little bit more than St. George's Park is a great way for everybody to meet up and integrate.
Yeah. Look at this YouTube video. Oh, also, it sounds like George has torn himself away from that MJ documentary. So
Yeah, I mean, that's a very difficult thing for George to do as well. But it is a great documentary, so we do recommend watching it. Netflix sponsor. But look, what
Netflix sponsored the Cannonpod.
Listen,
We get the little boo-boo at the beginning.
Yeah,
I love that.
Come on. We can do that. Now, one person who they may make a documentary about in the future, depending on how his career goes.
Here we go.
But they haven't made a documentary, but they have made a sauce. Bukayo Saka has a Saka sauce at Nando's. And listen, I haven't tried it yet. I tried to try it before the England game and I couldn't get access to it because everyone had it on the tables. So we couldn't get it. But I haven't tried it yet. But Saka's got his own sauce right now. And look, it kind of opens up a new conversation about Bukayo evolving off the field. We always talk about his on the field evolution and how he is as a player, and potential conversations of PFA Player of the Year for also in the league. But off the field, Alex, Bukayo he's evolving into a superstar, because even if you go into London, you go into the underground, you've got Saka's face everywhere now. As one of the main parts of the Premier League, and it's nice to see for sure.
Yep, he's on a Persil ad. I think I'm sure there's other sort of commercial stuff that people could point to. I think it's really important. Look, we talk about a player's development, as you say, and we talk about where he could go on the pitch. I think his long-term future is more central. I think there's certain things that we could discuss maybe on the pitch, but off the pitch, I do think it might seem tenuous, but little things do help you. Little, no, it's not. I'm not saying being in a personal ad helps you, but I'm saying that becoming the face of the Premier League, becoming the face of the project, being a player who people like. I don't know if you guys saw Luke Shaw's interview on Sky Sports. And he's
in love with him, though.
Yeah, he literally is. Yeah, it's a little bit worrying. I think the interviewer says like, "Who do you most look forward to when you go on international duty?" Luke Shaw like immediately goes Saka. He says like, "There's something I can't explain. You just love him." However, I mention that because there is this lovable quality to Saka, and there is this sort of everyone's son kind of thing. And I'm sure we all feel, even though I'm a couple of years older than him. An unspecified amount of years older than him, that you kind of feel a sort of a paternal relationship, or almost like a sort of parasocially paternal, is the way I've phrased it before. I do think that needs to shift a little bit, personally, for him to go to that next level in everyone's minds, which, by the way, does matter. Unfortunately, and it doesn't matter because of Twitter, and it doesn't matter because of people. Oh, people don't put them in their combined 11s. What matters is someone like Salah possibly leaving the league, and then Bukayo Saka going, "I am him." And I think that is going to take a little bit of all the commercial stuff that we're seeing, the club promoting him, maybe him speaking more in media appearances. I've often found him in media appearances very reticent to share anything other than the party line, and I would like to see him maybe do a sit-down, long-form chat, maybe talking about his career, maybe opening up a little bit more. I think that would be really useful for him, his career and his public perception, and to help him be perceived by the league in a certain way, in the way that he doesn't need to become a villain. But do people think of Kevin De Bruyne and Erling Haaland as nice guys? Not really. Do people think of Salah as a nice guy? Not really. Think of him as a brilliant football player. And I do think, and I feel like it's maybe a little bit tenuous, but I think it's part of his development. There needs to be a bit more bite in how he appears and how he approaches things. We're seeing that a little bit. For example, I think he appeared on CBS recently. He talked about his ambitions and spoke about all that sort of stuff. That's lovely, but there is still a little bit of a little broing happening with him. I still feel Thierry Henry puts his arm around him. I'll text you. Got advice, all that sort of stuff. I think if I'm Saka, I'm saying that's lovely, but to go to that next stage, to become one of the Premier League's most feared players, to become one of the most feared players in the world, to go, if he's on the team sheet, I'm scared of you in the Mbappe way, in the De Bruyne way, in the Haaland way. There might need to be a bit of a public perception shift. But we are seeing, how big he is becoming for the Premier League. But I think there is a way to go there, and I'd be interested to hear your guys' thoughts.
Yeah, I think the route is definitely, I'm looking at as Mbappe. Obviously, he's a superstar globally, but he's got that evil persona. And I don't think Bukayo's ever going to have that.
No,
but yeah, there's that sense of
and you don't need
that I'm not scared of being the villain.
Yep.
I'm not scared of turn. And you can see it's growing in a sense because he goes to certain grounds and he gets booed nowadays, Saka, because he scored goals against them and the fans hate it. So he is growing into that, and you can see that he wants the ball now in big occasions. I think a massive part of it's going to be Champions League. And how he does it against the likes of Bayern Munich and so, because if he can do and cause issues the likes of Alphonso Davies, and when all of Europe is watching, I think his perception is going to get even better and completely change to what we see right now.
Yeah.
Well, I think that his perception, look, the personality, you don't want to take away who he is, but at the same token, for me at least, I wanted him to become more of a killer on the pitch. In terms of the off the pitch stuff, I think, look, his brand will become more global the more global this Arsenal team becomes. He's the face of this Arsenal team, and the farther that this team goes, the farther Bukayo will go commercially and broadly. And I think he'll become the face of the England team because his quality is that. Like, when you reach a certain level, you become globalized. Like, you look at the best players, and if we're going to project that Bukayo has that type of ceiling, then you start to project that kind of influence. And I think you looked at his commercial development with, what was it, New Balance, when he created his own line. And I mean, he's making very smart, he's just such a smart boy. He really is. Like, across the board, he's just somebody that's very intelligent, knows his star, and knows how to maximize it. I think making sure that he remains the essence of who he is going to be the most important challenge for him as he grows. Because I think, footballing wise, there's very little that he's going to have to learn. in the future. A lot of the things that we talk about that Bukayo needs to reach the next part of the ceiling are intangibles. They are the inevitability. I think what you guys are really talking about is not necessarily like the mean street quote, but this idea of chance goal, chance goal, chance goal. And that mentality is, I think, the shift that we're looking for, and what he's going to be perceived of broadly as somebody that's just a reliable, dangerous threat that decides matches quite consistently. And, for me as a fan, as an Arsenal fan, it's an exciting development when you start to see that propped up. But I must say, I look at some of the best talents I've ever seen that came from young. And, I look at Wayne Rooney in terms of what England have done. And I am wary. England, respectfully to everybody there, you guys have a tendency to platform somebody to tear them down. And that, to be fair, I think that is media in general. I think we try to build up our heroes in a sense to tear them down. And I think it's a little bit more because we want to feel that they're human and they're touchable, because we make them untouchable. And I'm worried about that every time I see a big superstar come through, at least from an Arsenal perspective, because that is what could help destroy a career. And I think he's incredibly grounded. He's a very special human, and I want him to retain that quality. The one thing that I will say, with joking about Luke Shaw and everything, everybody talks about the humbleness, that part of Bukayo, and I don't want him to lose that, because you lose that, you lose what makes him special. So to kind of wrap that in a bow, I think it's excellent that we're seeing the globalization of certain talents. I must say, it brings new challenges, and it brings new challenges from the manager, from the fans, and from the club, trying to make sure that Bukayo can rise with the media, but make sure he stays grounded. And I don't think that's a problem for Bukayo, but I think that's a problem for the media. And that's what I'm more worried about.
Yeah, there's a potential for that for sure. I think you're right that there is certainly an English tendency to build people up and tear them down. As I say, I do think that's more of a media thing, but I think we have more examples in England. I think, yeah, as I say, I don't. You cannot lose your humility. You can always stay humble, but also be the guy who foreign TV, when England are playing Brazil, are focusing on in the warm up and focusing on the build up. Who's their killer? Who's the guy? We're looking at Vinny Jr. Who should Brazil be looking at? And that's the question. And obviously, most of that comes from his on-pitch performances. If you're scoring goal after goal, get assist after assist, that comes. But I do think there is also an element of, we underestimate the power of the unconscious. The little things you hear from Trent, the little things you hear from De Bruyne, the little things you hear from Haaland, these little kind of comments and quotes here and there, just sort of put in, you start to go, okay, there's a mental profile there that can be humble and accept that they're not, not where they want to be, but also can be, actually, I am in that conversation. And I think that is the next development.
100%. And I think massive goals are going to change that. And talking about goals, someone who's been scoring a lot of goals recently is Kai Havertz, scoring goals again for Germany. I think he's got, 4 goals in 5 games now, for club and country, and a goal up front playing for against France of all teams. And of course, he had Nagelsmann speak before the game, talking about how he's developed as a striker, and he's gone from playing as a left back for Germany now to playing as a striker. So the question then becomes, as a long-term potential, having seen his form recently, do you think Kai can be developed into more of a long-term centre forward? We'll go to Georgia first.
I worry about some major centre forward things with Kai. I think that he can be there in particular games. I think it works in terms of the squad, but I still genuinely believe that he would benefit from having a backboard physical presence that plays with him and he plays off of him. And I think that, him being the guy to reliably retain that contact is something that he won't be able to do throughout his career. Now, I think in general, one of the things that people like about him as a striker is he's a very associative player. So just really simply, he likes to come and help combinations, and he does like to solve problems. He keeps things simple, and he's able to recognize the space. That's really his superpower, whether it's through runs on the last shoulder or whether it's through quick touches to kind of release players. So I think in that sense, he's really good about solving problems in the final third. And he also, if you look at his career and you try to take away the Chelsea ideas and those examples and that damage that he did there, he's always been somebody that's overperformed XG which is not something that you really associate with Kai Havertz, because you think of him as somebody that's wasteful in terms of his efficiency in the box. But I think he's got really good ball striking, and I think he's got a brilliant mind to find space where there is none. So he will always carry that potential. I don't think that he's a starting number 9 in the future. I maintain he is that traditional second striker, that tip of a diamond formation in a 4, somebody that needs the freedom. Okay, and he needs freedom in the final third. He can't be restricted to a particular zone, but he shouldn't be the reference that the attack goes to get out of outlet situations. He should be somebody that's free to move where he wants, to live on the last shoulder, and to arrive in situations. And that's where you get the best Kai Havertz. Now, I think that Nagelsmann plays him in a really similar way to how Mikel would like to play him when he does play at 9. And so there's instances where we do go long to him, but I just don't think that that's going to be his long-term future. I think that he needs to play with somebody, and he should look to Muller in terms of what Muller did for Germany, in terms of what Muller has done in his career as well, in terms of that profile. I think he has a bit more mind of the past than Muller. Muller was the same in terms of, I think, had a bit more goal-scoring instinct than Kai does. But generally speaking, I think this tournament really could make or break Kai. And I'm very reticent to place that kind of wording on players. But he's coming off a bubbling season where people are starting to recognize what he's done from the past. And I think that no matter what Arsenal do in terms of winning a trophy this season, the narrative of Kai Havertz has shifted from when we bought him to now. So on a personal level, his career has taken what many people thought was a trough at Chelsea. It's starting to rise. And I think that a very good tournament from Kai Havertz does very good things to public perception. And I think public court of appeal dictates so much about a player's ability, and especially for a player that's now 24. We're looking at a player that is coming to a crossroads and entering his prime. It would actually be brilliant for Arsenal to develop another pre-prime player or entering prime player that's got a little bit of international prestige. And so I think a poor tournament could again raise questions. It just enters preseason with, are you going to fix him again, Mikel? And I think a great tournament goes, wow, you have fixed him and he's going to be a key part of your team. And I think that narrative for Kai Havertz is really important coming off the back of a full season with Mikel, because no matter what his detractors or his praisers, they all admit, you can almost give a player, I think there's an unwritten rule, a year of adaptation in the Premier League. We've seen it, right, with Robert Perez. We've seen it with tons of players in the past. But Kai doesn't get that because he's been in the league for 3 years. It's not the same thing. So regardless of how much time and empathy that you want to give to a new player in a team, you're sitting there and every Arsenal fan and every fan, period, is saying, okay, I've seen you for 3 years. I've seen you do some good things, some bad things, but fundamentally, I haven't seen you yet explode. And this is a tournament for me that you have an opportunity to explode. I think Germany are a very exciting team. They don't come into it with very many expectations. And in a lot of ways, Kai Havertz could really help platform himself again in world football with a strong tournament. And tournament football has this idea of romanticizing players. We've all seen how strong players in the tournament get to be pursued in the transfer window. And I just think that it's really a good opportunity for him to put his star forward. And I hope he grows in that sense. I hope that this tournament can make him feel important, because the starting number 9 for Germany has always been a little bit of a problem issue. They had Miroslav Klose. And then beyond that, they've really struggled to have a top number 9. They've always been really good in the half spaces and with wingers. But I think that Kai Havertz has potential to really help make that attack fit and fix as well, particularly with Musiala and Wirtz kind of being the ball to feet options in the half space. It really sets him up to do something big, and I hope he does.
It's important to ask because there's a lot of Arsenal fans right now that talk about the potential of, if we can't get the exact striker we want to sign, not to waste money on a plan B or plan C and actually use Kai there and invest more on a wide forward and maybe even sign a midfielder instead. And that's why I asked the question, because, you know, Kai's recent performances up front have been very good, and even the performance against France was seen as a top centre-forward's performance. So there are fundamentals there, Alex, and he is, of course, massive. He's 6'4". He's got a pace. And as George said, you know, he has career-wise overperformance XG, so finishing ability is there. What do you think?
I watched that comp of him against France. I think sometimes with Kai, people project what they want to see from him on his game that I'm not sure is always there. And so people go, you know, masterful performance. I'm like, I'm not saying it was bad. It was not a bad performance at all. It was a comp, so I don't know. But from the actions that we saw in that comp, and people were like, oh my God, it was incredible. So it's right. I think similar to what George was sort of saying at the beginning I think there are teams. What do we mean when we say can he play centre forward? For me, it's much more about his associations and those who are around him. I think in certain teams, Kai Havertz is actually a really brilliant centre forward and is perfect to be in that position. And in certain teams, he isn't. So I think in Erling Haaland, you build a team around him and he's always a centre forward and it's just about who's around him. But Kai Havertz is maybe a bit different. I think possibly in this Arsenal team, there could be that. Why is that? The one thing that I would say, the reason that I would say Kai Havertz, it's relative whether he can play centre forward, is his instinct isn't the same as your traditional number 9. When you watch him, he does have an instinct to reset, to go back, to receive the ball and cut back on himself and reset play. He doesn't have that run to the front post. He doesn't have that, if Arsenal are on the break, he's waiting to crash the box late rather than sort of get across the front post. Now, all those things might be instruction, and that's fine. But I've never seen Kai Havertz do that sort of centre forward play, the traditional number 90 centre forward play, which is what I'm interested in from whoever we go and get in the summer. I think he needs
to be more aggressive in possession. I think that's just the fundamental truth.
Yeah. I think in the end, you don't see the bombastic dynamic and sort of that mercurial level of centre forward play that you see from, think back on the best number 9s, the Luis Suarez's, the Agueros, all these guys, all come in different, Haaland, all come in different shapes and sizes, but there's a level of ball striking, there's a level of aggression and possession, as George says, there's a level of smelling the goal that I don't think Havertz quite has. However, if we're playing with Saka and Martinelli, or we go out and sign another winger, I don't want that type of number 9. I want someone who's going to be slightly different, or certainly if Saka and Martinelli are playing the same way as they are this season. So it's all relative. And I think Havertz could be a really interesting, different option than the more false 9-y thing we did with Jesus last season. It's slightly different. It's a more associative role. So I don't know. It just does depend. Whatever he is a brilliant part of the squad. Brilliant part of the squad and can be so many different things for us. I don't think he is the number 9 that I think people mean when they say number 9, and I think it's a lot of projection of what he could be than actual reality.
Yeah, of course, and you can look into the Bobby Firmino role in terms of helping the other players around him, and I think that's the key part. Is I don't think Arsenal fans realise, but signing a centre forward doesn't mean that the players that we have around him are going to score the same amount of goals. You might see the striker score more goals, and I think fans need to be aware of that because they have this expectation that if we sign an Osimhen or someone like that, he will score 30 goals, Saka will score his 15, 20, and so will Martinelli, and I think that will change. And
just to jump on that quickly, what do you think in Arteta's mind the dream is? Because I don't think the dream is having a centre forward who scores 30 goals. I don't think that's what he wants. The longer I analyse Arteta, the more I'm like, I don't think this guy actually wants that. He might sign someone who it appears is the number 9. Everyone gets the thumbnails out. This is the guy who's going to score. He's going to score 30 goals. You get on Saturday Social, you say he's in the combined 11. All that stuff, fine. I don't think Arteta in himself goes, I want someone who I rely on to go and score me 30 goals. I don't think that's who he is.
It's tough because I think that we've developed one in Bukayo Saka. And I don't think fans want to have that conversation yet when you start talking about this season. And I think, for me, what he doesn't want is the team to rely on a player. And for example, look, Haaland's brilliant. Mbappe's brilliant. Arteta's base philosophy out of possession is such a collective. We are such a collective in terms of how we approach. So I think that, look, if you've got somebody that's going to score you 30 goals, he's not turning up his nose at that. But that 30-goal striker has to perform with the team. And so, look, I keep hiding from it, but let's say you get a Victor Osimhen, one of the most hardest working center forwards around. That also has the little side benefit of, yeah, he could have the potential to score 30 goals. I think as long as Victor Osimhen stops running, Mikel says, I don't want you.
Yep.
And I think that could go to the case with whatever purchase that we make. So I think it's less about recruiting that output, because I think he wants a high output, but it's more about can that player be collective in our out of possession approach, and that's the key.
Yeah, I think maybe that's a better way of putting it. It's like, obviously, if someone scored 30 goals, that's lovely, but there's other things to consider first. I think that's not at the top of his priority list is probably the point.
Yeah. It's about making the collective, a better goal-scoring team. And I think that's the question of why I feel like maybe Kai might have potential there. Because I feel like with him up front, we do cause a bit more issues. And I think Saka and Martin, they do almost perform better because he's so comfortable going on both sides. And if you can
ask you something, Bhavs? So I want to ask you something, because you enjoy, like, Kai as a 9, right? And in terms of just how you wanted to construct maybe the attacking department, what for you is missing? So let's say you put somebody like a Kai Havertz as a number 9, and you've got your Jesus, and we have a number 9 list of Island of Misfit Toys. Not the guy, but people that we plug in for certain games, right? What for you would be missing in the front line? Like, how do you describe your inevitability, let's say?
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, is that you want more inevitable players for sure as well. But I feel the thing with that is coming as well with the wide players. I think in terms of that, we've got a lot of players on our team that are very good finishers. Saka, Martinelli, Odegaard. These are players that have consistently overperformed their XG, and Kai likewise at Bayer Leverkusen, are players that are going to take those chances and are more clinical than you expect. So what's missing is weird, because I would have said a different profile, but Kai is a different profile. You can go long to him. He can make runs in behind. He can be an outlet. So that's the thing, is there's so much potential there. I'm thinking, why waste it? Why waste it? We talk about him maybe playing better with the backboard, but where did he play then? Does he play in that role that he played earlier this season? Because then what happens with Martinelli? Does he still perform to the high levels? So that's why I'm looking at our team right now going, like, Kai up front makes a lot of sense. And I have a fear that if we go and get a striker, on paper he'll score more goals, but the rest of the team won't score as many goals as a collective, or be as unpredictable. So, massive things there. Anyways, we've also got to talk about results. Arsenal had a game behind closed doors, which we lost 4 goals to 0.
Get them all out.
4 goals to 0. Now, of course, there was a lot of youngsters. There was a lot of youngsters playing there. And
stop making excuses for it. Excuses are coming out. Classic.
But there was also 2 first-team players that
top gooner. You are
keenly involved. There was one in Takehiro Tomiyasu, the other Thomas Partey. Now we have massive games approaching. The biggest one, of course, being our next one against Man City. And Partey looks to be fit, looks to be available, and obviously doesn't look like he's re-injured anything. Touch wood. So first
before you ask me.
No, I'm not saying start against Man City, but I'm just talking about in general for this final run-in. Does he start as soon as he's match sharp? Because I know George will say yes, but I don't think Alex will say yes.
Who's that to?
So we'll go to Alex.
As I say, I don't like teams. Yeah. I don't like changing.
So George, what do you
winning
think?
Teams?
Well, because I like doing this. I mean, let's just have an honest conversation. A match fit Thomas Partey. Are we really saying he's not in the starting 11? Like, we can question whether or not he becomes match fit, but if the question is a match fit Thomas Partey,
that's the concern, though. As you said, there is if he becomes match sharp, and I think that takes time. Do we have the chance to throw him into games and start him and let him?
Okay, let me ask you.
Partey always has those games he has to go through first.
Okay, sure, but like a half-fit Thomas Partey doesn't have the quality to close out Man City in 20 minutes. A half-fit Thomas Partey doesn't have an opportunity to play against Luton at home. A half-fit Thomas Partey doesn't fit against Brighton. Like, this question of half-fit, the one thing that I will admit and I will maintain is a question, and a valid question, is through this process of getting half-fit, does he get re-injured? That is an unknown. Let's put that to a side. But this idea of match fitness, it's a concern for 2 weeks, guys. Like, you become match fit after 3 to 4 matches. It's not something that we're going to have to worry about for very long. And the games are coming quick and fast. So every 3 days we're playing. So I think within 2 weeks, there's an opportunity to see whether or not a match fit Thomas Partey stays match fit. But excluding that, guys, there's very few midfielders in the world that possess his quality. And one of the issues that we've had is accessing zone 14. If you were to draw up a list of potential DMs and a potential list of central midfielders that consistently access zone 14 through their passing, Thomas Partey is one of the top of that list every single time. And so I really think you have to divorce the conversation where, listen, let's admit that we don't know the fitness. Nobody knows that. We can't be God as podcasters, and we can't be whatever, religious affinity that you have. We don't know the future in that sense. We don't know if he will stay fit. But if you are asking, does the team benefit from somebody of that quality? I will maintain, if Thomas Partey stays fit for this run-in, he is so important that for me, he guarantees Arsenal a trophy. That is the level of quality that I see with him. Now, we can still have debates. Is it worth having a player that's only available for 10 games a season? Okay, let's divorce that talk. That's a summer decision about long-term future. But in terms of the quality, I really feel it's important to speak about what we get with an asset that doesn't get lost with absence, which I think is a bigger problem with a lot of fans in general. When you don't see a player for a very long time, we start to question some of the things that we know he's the best at. And so that's what I'm concerned with. And I think that no matter what, there are games for a Thomas Partey, and there's going to be games for a Georgino and other people. But that flexibility is going to be something that I guarantee Mikel Arteta is waiting to have and is desperate to have.
I'm sure he is. And I don't necessarily disagree with your analysis of the passing into zone 14. But what I would say is that what we need right now against Man City? I don't know. Is my question. I look at the run that we've been on. Depends how Mikel wants to set up. I look at the run that we've been on, and I look at that happening with Georgino. I think look at the best football we played. Could argue for 20 years in terms of the run, but anyway, there's certainly the best football we played this season. It has come with Georgino in the team, and that ability, as we've spoken about lots of times on the podcast, to know when to impose on the game, when to sit back on the game, that pivot that comes with Georgino and Rice, the control that we have. I don't want to give that up very quickly. Now, there may be a case where we go out against Man City, we start Georgino and Rice, something isn't working, Partey comes in, boom, he plays 45 minutes and he's in for Luton and he wins us the league. And no one will be happier than me. But as we're sat here right now with someone who I've seen come on and have two, let's face it, pretty sloppy cameos, understandably, by the way, because he's been out injured, I'm not blaming him, but two pretty sloppy cameos, I want to hold back a little bit. And as I say, after 20 minutes, I could be sat here, and if we were doing a watch along, I'd be saying, get Thomas Partey on. So I know the quality, I love the player, but as I always say, I hate changing winning teams, especially when we know what we've seen has a brilliant way of working, and the quality that Georgino's shown, the reliability, the availability. I would start him against Man City.
Is he available though? Hold on. The only thing that I would push back on is I don't quite think Georgino is necessarily available. I mean, for me, there's been issues with that, and there's been documented issues where we do need to manage him. I mean, we've had to take him out because of foot issues for a long time. And I think that the reason that Georgino has been around in this run-in is because we've played him very sparingly. And it's only been once a week. And even if that,
he's fit, no?
No, he's fit right now.
He's fit right now, but he's had a foot issue that we couldn't consistently play him with. That we've had to manage that. That's been well documented.
We have, and I agree.
If it's been well documented, I've missed it.
I mean, Mikel, I think he didn't start.
Mikel said it in press conference.
He didn't start a certain game because he wasn't fully fit. But this is a guy that's had like 4 injuries in his entire career.
Okay. I wasn't saying you're wrong, George. I literally hadn't heard it. I just put in Georgino foot, and yeah, you're right.
I feel like he's a player who can play through it, who you can manage. We've heard reports recently about Saka having an injury he's playing through. Certain players can do it. I think Partey, he hasn't been able to do that so far. And that's why it's very hard for us to rely upon him again. Forget as a fan base, but as Mikel as a manager. Why would you change the team around him again dynamically, and then he gets injured, and then I got to change it back again? I think the difference between last year and this year is last year we were begging for those injured players to return because you knew we needed that player. Now, the players that have stepped in have stepped up, and they're doing well. So you're going, do we need to take Kivior out anymore? Do we have to take out Georgino? Do we have to take out Havertz up front? And that's a good sign, because now these players that were guaranteed starters like Zinchenko, Jesus and Partey aren't as much. And we're not as reliant on those players. And of course,
so do you guys think that form should predate past sample? I guess that's the question, because let's remove the Thomas Partey debate for a second, because you talk about that, where let's look at Kivior, who's been in good form, but you've got Tomiyasu, who we know has had lockdown performances against top wingers, and you're looking at a Bayern who's facing Kingsley Coman. Okay, that's coming up. That decision is coming up. Do you guys believe that Kivior deserves to play that because of the form over the past sample of what we know with the quality, even though we haven't seen it recently? Like, where do you guys stand on when quality and history compete?
I don't think there's hard and fast rules on that, and I think in that case I probably would start Tomiyasu. So in that case, past sample would override form. But in this case for Georgino and Partey, I'm going for form over past sample. But it's not that I'm selecting I'm just looking at two players in a situation, selecting one over the other based on what I think. I wouldn't say one, you always go over form or you always go for past sample. But I think in this case with Thomas Partey, as Bhavs was saying, I feel we've found something so beautiful in that midfield. We've found something that is really, really working. As I say, 10 minutes into the Etihad, I could be talking about something differently. But right now, it feels like we found something, and I feel that balance in the midfield with Jorginho, Rice, and Ødegaard is really working for us. Especially having Rice higher, because considering what's worked, if we're talking specifically on the Man City game, which maybe we need to get to. But looking at how high Rice was, how he dealt with Rodri, how he dropped back into the mid block, him stepping forward, all that stuff, the freedom he's allowed from that position. I like that dynamic with Georgino.
I would actually say form counts more for me, especially this part of the season. And I say that because these players that come back from injuries, we're not talking about players that are like Kevin De Bruyne, they can snap back straight into it. They do struggle sometimes with match sharpness. And when you've got that player who's match sharp, in confident, in full flow, why take him out? Why take him out? Because you know that player right now is better suited to the team, is more adapted to the team. And sometimes players might take time to adapt. Now, if that game is Bayern Munich away, and Kivior is more like a Zinchenko defensively, where he's not as reliable. He's poor defensively, maybe. But right now, I think I trust the players in form, because that form for me is more important than the past history. Unless, of course, that player is Kevin De Bruyne. That is the exception. That player is a guaranteed player that can do it and turn it on straight away. Tomiyasu, Partey, these are players that, because they've had so many injuries in the past few years, they aren't as reliable when they come back straight away. They take time sometimes, and that's why you have fans opening conversations. Oh, Tomiyasu's come back, he looks a bit shaky, should we sell him? Partey's come back, he looks a bit shaky, should we sell him? Whereas the likes of KDB and co, those guys, Haaland, they score straight away and fans don't care. So I think that's the exception you have to take into account. But Alex mentioned it, massive game coming up, lads, on Sunday, right? I'm pretty sure
Sunday.
Yep, Sunday. So, listen, it will be season defining, and we're going to have a more detailed preview, of course, in the podcast later this week. But just
where can they find that, Bhavs?
You could find it on Patreon.
But where else?
YouTube members as well. You could do that. So, listen, lads, early thoughts going into that game. Just, still a wild to the game, but it's coming up. It's coming up fast. We have, of course, another international friendly before that. England versus Belgium. But yeah, in Man City Arsenal, early thoughts. We'll go to George first. Early thoughts, not a detailed breakdown of this is what's going to happen.
Don't tell us what's going to happen, George, right? Because you can't do that.
I just want a statement. And I think that it's, I want us to grow up. That's all. And I think that, some of this topic of this podcast has been little broing. I think that Arsenal have been little broed for far too long. I want us to take the mantle and to accept it. I've just seen so much. Look, there's a lot of trepidation in the fan base, and there's a lot of, I don't know. And I want the players to give the fans security, and that comes with a statement. And we'll talk about the tactics. We'll talk about the results later in the week, but really quickly, it's just I want that statement performance, and I want a team that doesn't look young anymore. I want a team that's looked ready to impose themselves on the world. That's really what I want to see, because I can tell you right now, Mikel, Pep, everybody in the game respects what we're doing. I don't think everybody in world football doubts anything that we do, but everything about our media narrative, about our own fans, the public court of appeal is unsure about Arsenal. They really are. And they're waiting for them to fail. They're waiting for instances of that. And I want the boys to put every single narrative to bed, because it is games like this where that public court of appeal changes, and the excuses of the Community Shield were it's not a competitive league. Well, okay, here you go, boys. You're in a title challenge with your fiercest rivals against a manager who many consider the best manager to have lived, against a team that is arguably one of the best teams to have lived, coming off the back of a treble and competing for things that are going to do big things at the end of the season. Like, let's go. Like, stop this fear. I don't know. I want to lower my expectations so I don't get hurt. None of that. I want the boys to come in and take that tag of you guys have arrived. And I'm starting to see it in certain interviews, but I just want the team to give fans a reason to believe. And that's all I want from it.
It's important because a lot of last season and compared to this year, it's been almost like a revenge sort, and everything we're doing is trying to avenge last year. And, beating City at home was a massive thing, of course, earlier in the year. And if we can make it even 4 points out of 6 will be massive, but 6 points out of 6. It all goes back to that game last at the Etihad, where, of course, we had some injuries, but we were blown out of the water, right? And you're fighting for a title. I think we were at the time top of the league, and they just smashed us 4-1. And it hurt, and I'm sure the players would have hurt as well. So I do wonder, Alex, how much of this game will Mikel use that game last season psychologically to help them push forwards?
Yeah, I mean, you have to take lessons from it. Look, if you'd asked me before that game, how confident are you? I'd be saying, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not sure. I have all these doubts. What happens with Rob Holding?
Every game is a little bit different. And, 10 minutes in, Rob Holding could change my mind.
10 minutes in.
He did change my mind. Get him off.
But there is there was a lot more question marks than I think there are this season. I know what Arsenal's going to turn up. I have no doubts that I'm not saying we're going to win, but I know what Arsenal will turn up. We're going to turn up and we're going to try and go after them. And we're going to try and we're going to have the quality to do that. We're going to have the football ideas to go and do that. They're not going to have many chances. It's going to be a tough game. Then it's down to the fine margins. But I've not got the same worries as last season. We could give a stupid ball away. We could get run over in the first 2 minutes, all that sort of stuff. One thing I'd say is it's a similar thing when it comes to the Champions League is you get fans who basically do complete results-based analysis or pundits who go, right, well, Arsenal can never beat Bayern or Arsenal can never beat Man City. Okay, well, who do you mean by Arsenal? You mean the 11 players on the pitch and the manager. That's what you mean, right? Who are making the most of the decisions. Edison v Raya, at least a debate. Ben White v Kyle Walker, right now, might not even be there. Saliba and Gabriel v Diaz and Akanji, at least a debate, and I'd have Saliba and Gabriel. You go through the team, and then you go up against the managers, and obviously Guardiola's a better manager than Arteta, I'm not denying that, but in terms of football ideas, I don't see some huge gulf. I don't see some, oh my God, Arteta isn't even in the same ballpark as Guardiola. Guardiola's had obviously the way bigger impact on the game, is the better coach, has proven it over a longer period. Done, fine. But in terms of football ideas, getting their team playing at a brilliant level, look at the XG differential. Look at the field tilt. Look at the PPDA. Look at it's not an opinion. It's just they are playing at the same level right now.
Better,
better, and arguably better. Well, yeah, it's better by certain metrics. So it's not me going, oh, I'm rating my manager over that manager. It's a fact. So and you go through the teams. You go 1v1. Who is the better player? There's debates all over the park. So we shouldn't go in there thinking, as George mentioned, we shouldn't go in there as little bros. We shouldn't go in there as, oh, we're just plucky Arsenal coming along. Sorry. We're there to take their crown off them. And there shouldn't be but no. We know we have the quality. We've shown it all season. We know we have the players. We've shown them all season. I think we have an entirely fit squad other than potentially about Martinelli, who knows on that one, and obviously Timber. So I think we have every right to go in there feeling, look, they're a huge team. They're amazing. They are more than capable of beating us, but we're more than capable of beating them, as we've shown twice this season.
And there's a lot of City fans saying, come to us and show us what you're made of. Mm-hmm. And that's what I want to do. Because if you can make it 6 points out of 6 against the reigning treble winners, by the way, I wonder how the perception changed. How does the media talk about Arsenal? Because you can see it's changing in the first place, and a lot of it is even the signing of Declan Rice changed so much. Going, oh wow, Arsenal gone out and signed one of the best midfielders in the league, and spent £100 million, and you can see that changing slowly but surely. Arsenal have gone from they're going to get bullied to now, hang on a minute, these men have got a physical side, and it's not going to be easy to bully them. And you see obviously the pre-match stuff and how they look over in tunnel and stuff, and you can see Mikel's trying to change the narrative back, but win at the Etihad, and I think that might be the one.
Sorry, really quickly, like before we end, I think this game is so important because look, every game we try to put this is the most important game of the season, and in a run-in, that is the case. Like, I don't want to draw that out, but mate, like the psychological impact of this team doing it against this team, against this manager, I think it's really understated, but it's very important, even for Mikel, to a certain degree. He's always been the student. I guarantee you that pisses him off. I guarantee you, we always joke about Mikel's cone man and whatnot. There is a feisty and a fieriness about him, and I just think that this squad in general, they need to take their destiny into their own hands, and they need to take that next step. They need to. Whether if we're projecting 2, 3, 4 years, I think all of us think that Mikel will win a trophy with this squad, right? That next step about winning is about the team recognizing how good they are, and we need to start beating teams in the tunnel, and we're doing it. You see the gifts, you see everybody looking at kind of the quote-unquote aura of everybody in the squad. But I think these players need to themselves start saying, yeah, no, I'm the best player in the world. Because right now, we're doing good, we're all in a process, and that's fine talk. But that transition to winners, you need conviction. You're not going to win in life saying, yeah, I'm doing well, I'm kind of doing my best effort to proceed and progress. You have to believe, no, I'm the best at what I do. And here's the proof, and this is me going out to do it. So I just hope that the squad understands that importance to a level, because Arsenal have not risen to the occasion for many years, lads. And you know what? It's a frustration of mine. I just want us to have some fight. And this is a big occasion. And I'm not afraid that we won't show it, but I'm putting that demand, that standard. That's the standard that I hold to the squad. The fucking standards are, you must be proud of the damn name on the shirt at the front, because then if you are, people will remember the one on the back. That's how it is. I'm fired up, baby. Let's go.
Right, Mikel, listen. We know we've just used this as a team talk, so make sure you subscribe to the Cannon podcast, like the video as well, and comment below your thoughts. We love to hear your thoughts, Mikel. Anyways, guys, that is the pod there and there. And we'll be back on Thursday for Patrons and YouTube members. And of course, there will also be a video on YouTube as well. So until then, my friends, take care. Peace.
Peace.
Peace.